Everything of hers is at the house. She wouldn't leave her kid behind. She wouldn't leave my little brother behind like that.
Who goes away without their phone and without their child and without their car and doesn't contact the people that they're in contact with on a daily basis.
That was the eldest son and ex-husband of missing person Ella Diebolt Jackson. Are we going to see some comments from her current husband? And do we have some reason to be suspicious of him around the conditions with her disappearance? We're going to look into all of that today. It's time to turn on the searchlight for Ella Jackson. Welcome back to Searchlight. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I hope that you are preparing to have a nice holiday weekend with your friends and family. Unfortunately, for the family of Ella Jackson, there is a lot of concern and a lot of worry. She has been missing for over a month at this point. Let me go ahead and bring up a photo of her here. And the conditions which she went missing are, they're a bit troublesome, let's just say. I was originally looking at this case to couple it up with my coverage of the updates on the Michelle Parker case. There's a lot of similarities that we have going on here, except with Ella and her current husband, I'm not seeing any indicators of any type of fight that they were in or disagreement that they were going through or anything like that. Looking through social media, by all accounts, it seems like it was a pretty happy family with a new younger member to it. Because of that, I'm not going to be able to dive into their social media. Their social media is really very centered around their youngest son. And of course, I don't want to expose his image on YouTube unless we absolutely had to. He's not missing in this case. She is. But let's go ahead and get into some of the details here and see, does this really line up with the Michelle Parker case? Do we have cause to be concerned with her disappearance in regards to a possible foul play scenario and much more? I wanted to start here at a website called Upwork.com. This is a place where you can post yourself as kind of an independent contractor, and I did find a profile here for Ella. English, Russian, and Russian to English, translator and editor. Translation for clients in tech, medical, pharmaceutical, legal, finance, marketing. This is someone that was originally born in Russia. I believe she was raised in the Ukraine and then came over to the U.S. She graduated from a university in Kentucky. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. And she's had two marriages. Both of them have been to professors of universities in Kentucky as well. In terms of her social media, like I said, I can't show you guys too much, but just know that it's very focused on her family. I'm seeing a bit of a fascination with art. I did find a Pinterest account for her. There's literally a pin board called Ideas for the House, and it just seems to be design ideas for her home. And I do believe this is her current husband that's actually in the photo up here. But just someone that is really seems very nurturing of her family. Seems like someone that maybe is a little bit earthy, according to at least some of the posts that I've seen, but also kind of a cool knack for fashion and design and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I could gather of her. We're going to hear a little bit more about her as we go through the articles, but let's jump to Wikipedia and kind of learn about the area where this is happening. She disappeared from her home in Richmond, Kentucky. Richmond is a city in and the county seat of Madison County, Kentucky, United States. It's the home of Eastern Kentucky University. I believe her ex-husband works there. The population was 35,894 in 2018. Richmond serves as the center for work and shopping for South Central Kentucky. Let's get into some of the details of the disappearance, starting at foxlexington.com. Ella Diebolt Jackson, also known as Ella Hans, that's actually her name from her previous marriage, was last seen at her home on October 20th. Of course, I'm recording this on the 26th, so we're talking a month and a week at this point that she's been missing. Certainly a reason to be concerned with that. The 48-year-old's phone, dog, car, were all left behind. So was her 5-year-old son, who was being cared for by her husband. So one of the tools that we look for in missing persons cases, phone, and being able to trace phone location, phone records, is pretty much out of play here. The phone has been left behind. From what I understand, her dog has some special medical needs. He has medication that he has to take regularly. She was kind of his caretaker, so her family thinks it's really weird that she would leave her dog behind. And of course, her 5-year-old son, which she apparently never, I don't think she even spent a night away from her 5-year-old son, at least according to the information we're seeing in some of these articles. So kind of strange. Now, there is a story that we are getting from the husband, which is that she asked him to take the 5-year-old son and to give her some time at home alone. And basically, when they came home, she was gone, and all these items are being left behind. How she left without the car is certainly a question. Not impossible. They're not in an area that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there is public transportation options, or there could be someone that's helping her along the way in terms of taking her to another location. So a lot of questions right off the bat, but let's continue with more articles and see if we can find more details here that might be able to help. This is over at richmondregister.com. Jackson also goes by the name Ella Hans. She is 5 feet 8 inches tall and 150 pounds with a thin build and shoulder-length black hair. She was last seen wearing khaki-colored cut shorts, black and white shoes with a 3/4 length sleeve, Under Armour shirt, and hoop earrings. Unfortunately, there is no NamUs profile that is available for her case yet. And as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I don't think I've even seen a legit missing persons poster on this. Let me do a quick search and verify that. Thankfully, the Aware Foundation has created an actual poster for her. I'm really not seeing it in the articles as much as I typically would. Quite honestly, I'm also not finding articles about the community kind of being rallied to help with searches or to help with putting up posters and things like that. It might be happening. Maybe it's just not making it to the media for some reason. I'm also not finding an official Facebook page. There's a lot of things that I feel like could be done in this case, and I'm not quite seeing them. I don't know if that is by intent or not. It could be that there's some information that law enforcement has between them and the family, and they're deciding not to do those things for some reason. Can't quite imagine why, unless it's a very bad outcome, which I hope it isn't. For any family members or friends that are seeing this, there's a link in the description box below to a website called Brainscratchers. I've put together a page there of missing person tips. It's like the basics of what to do and expect if you're faced with a missing loved one like this. So if you are a friend or family member, please check that out and see if you might be able to use some of those to help this case progress a bit. It's strange. I'm also just going to be completely honest with you guys. I think it's really strange that we have her ex-husband essentially leading the media front. He's the one that appears in most of the articles speaking about her. Her son also certainly doing some work in that regard, but her current husband, not a whole lot. I'm only finding, I think, one reference to something that he said, and I'm seeing a couple of articles that say that they've reached out to him, and basically he's not responding to those organizations. So certainly some cause for concern, but a big thank you to the Aware Foundation and Missing Adults Kids for posting this poster here. And just know I'll have a link to this in the description box below. If you live in the area and you want to print some of these out and put them up, please do. So like I mentioned, no NamUs profile currently. Sometimes those take time. We're only about a month out, so I'll try to keep an eye on it. But if I don't see one created there, I'll just go ahead and create one myself here fairly soon. Continuing at Kentucky.com. Richmond mom never spent a night away from her son. She's been missing since Sunday. This was posted on October 25th, 2019. Ella Diebolt Jackson, 48, was last seen at her Westwood Drive home in Richmond. She has not been active on social media since the weekend, according to her ex-husband. Now, at least from the stuff that I saw, I think the most recent post that I saw was from the summer. At least for her Facebook account, it doesn't look like she was super active there, at least from what I could see. And it could be that she has it locked down so her friends and family see more than someone that isn't connected to her account. But she might have other accounts that I'm just not aware of that she's more active on. Her ex-husband, Jason Hans, is a professor of family sciences at the University of Kentucky. He said, Ella loves her children more than life itself and never would have willingly left without her son. She's the mother of a 5-year-old son and an adult son. Jackson's husband could not be immediately reached for comment. He's an Eastern Kentucky University professor, Hans said. So I think I said it backwards before. Her current husband is at Eastern Kentucky, and her former husband is at the University of Kentucky. Jackson is a native of Russia who lived in Ukraine as a young adult before moving to Lexington in 2004. A graduate of University of Kentucky, she moved to Richmond with her current husband in 2015. So the area she goes missing from, we know it's her home. It is on Westwood Drive in Richmond, Kentucky. You can see that is kind of a bit of a short street. It doesn't go all the way through. It kind of hits a hoop. There's another street back here and then another street name. So pretty tight area. When we're looking at the area kind of overall, we've got a freeway kind of bordering over on one side, or a highway. We've got a lot of homes around here and some businesses to the south. Not a ton of open area, a little bit of open area out here. But there's just not a lot of places. I mean, if we are looking at a worst case scenario, I don't know that she would be very close to her actual home. Also looking for water sources in this area. We do have a couple of ponds. We've got a couple of lakes that are nearby as well. I have no idea if there's searches that have been done in those areas in particular. I do think that I've heard something about this local park, Million Memorial Park. I think that there has been some searching that has been done there, but we can see not too far at all from Eastern Kentucky University, and just a ton of businesses and homes all over this. So it's interesting because if she did disappear of her own accord, there's certainly a lot of people in this area, so it could be that someone helped her do that. If she didn't, and we're looking at other kind of darker situations, I don't know. I don't know where she would be when I look at this map. We don't have, sometimes we look at cases and it's obvious it's out in the middle of nowhere and there's a very large search area and the community kind of rallies around the family, usually with some organization from someone that's kind of the quarterback. Could be a family member, could be a very close friend, but they'll organize searches and they'll start hitting parks. They'll start looking through water sources. I'm not seeing that, at least in the media that's reported on this. Like I said, very good chance that it could be happening. But let's continue at the Richmond Register. The Richmond Police Department is asking for assistance from the community. According to Rodney Richardson, who is the Assistant Chief of Police for Richmond Police Department, they were contacted the day after she was last seen by her husband. On Tuesday, police were contacted by Jackson's son and decided to move forward with a missing persons report. Quote, "The next steps, we ask the public for their help, and we work our side and lead down the trail of where the facts take us. That is how we work these. We follow the evidence and the facts and see where we end up," Richardson said. A little bit of concern because I'm not seeing a lot of media around the search efforts. And in a case like this, a staggering amount of missing persons cases turn out to be homicides, unfortunately. And let me just say that's of long-term missing persons cases. The vast majority of missing persons cases get solved in a relatively tight time frame, and it's not a nefarious outcome, let's say. But for long-term missing persons cases, things that go on for several weeks, a lot of these do actually turn out to be foul play situations. If you're not looking for the actual person, there could be facts or evidence that are kind of timely. I mean, if you are looking for security cameras, you've got sometimes only a 7-day window, sometimes a 30-day window. We're already outside of both of those. So if they haven't done any looking for security cameras, there's a very good chance that whatever footage that they would have been able to find that potentially could help them could be gone at this point. What we're hearing here, the quote from Richardson, actually sounds to me like something that usually happens about a month or two after the person goes missing. And I know we're at a month now, but this quote is actually from an article that is just, I think, it's not even a week after she goes missing. So there is a mode usually where local law enforcement will kind of kick down and say, hey, look, we've done everything we can. And at this point, we need the public's help. We need tips to come in, and we're going to work those tips. And he's making that quote very, very early here. At lex18.com, son suspicious of mother's disappearance. And of course, this is her older son, Philip Hans. Her adult son said the two talked or texted daily. He shared a message she sent him of her walking one of her dogs at Million Park Sunday around 1:30 p.m. So that must be the reference that I was thinking of about Million Park. So I guess I don't know that any search efforts have been done there. That's the last time Philip Hans said he had any communication with his mother. He said her longest trips from home were to the grocery store. Now, there's a video segment that's included on this, and in that, he gives a little more detail that they actually didn't put in the written article here. He sent some messages back to her, and he could see that those messages were read on days following her actual disappearance. Now, is that really suspicious or not? I don't know, because we know her phone is left at home. We know her husband is living at home. Could he be checking her phone, looking for some sign of where she is, or trying to go through her messages to see if she had lined up something with someone to come and pick her up or take her somewhere? I think so. I don't think we could rule that out. So is it really strange that those messages get opened? I can't really say that it is at this point. It does interest me that the messages would be read later. I assume that it's the husband that's looking at those messages, would go into messages that came from a phone number that he would certainly know to be her older son. I don't know, guys. I'm really, tell me about it in the comments below. Do you guys think that it's strange that he would open those messages? Do you think that any concerned person would be trying to review all media in that phone, trying to figure this out? That's kind of where I'm at with it, but I want to hear your opinions about it in the comments below. Let's continue with more details here. Hans went on to say Jackson would never abandon her 5-year-old son or disabled dog who requires daily medicine. Jackson's husband, EKU English professor Glenn D. Jackson, told Lex 18 Jackson asked him and their young son to leave the house last weekend for an extended period of time. He believes she left on her own. Jackson's older son, Philip, disagrees. That's literally the only info that I've seen that comes directly from her current husband, Glenn Jackson. And by the way, I did find a picture of him here. There is more information out there, but I'm not trying to dox the guy. He's got his info's all over the place because he's a professor. But this is her husband. Is it a strange statement to you guys that he's saying that she asked me and our 5-year-old son to leave the house for an extended period of time? I don't know. It's interesting to me that her older son wouldn't be chiming up with, oh yeah, that's something my mom had done before, or her ex-husband, who is pretty easily available for all these articles and, being quoted all over the place. He's also not necessarily stepping up and saying, this is a known pattern. We've seen this from her before. It's tough because we're not getting a lot of insight on what actually happened from Glenn. But is Glenn Jackson, is he actually cooperating with the authorities? Is he hiding out? Has he lawyered up? What's going on around all this? A little more insight from messenger-inquirer.com. Posted October 27th, 2019. The woman's husband is cooperating with police, Assistant Police Chief Rodney Richardson said, and no one has been identified as a suspect as of Friday morning. Keep in mind, this is still within the first week. That's another thing that kind of bothers me about this case a little bit, is the coverage is pretty much all first week coverage, and then it stops. Everything just stops in terms of the coverage. I haven't quite seen anything like this with a missing persons case before, especially one that's able to rally so much coverage. There's a lot of, I would consider them kind of smaller publications that picked up this story initially. I'm kind of flabbergasted that no one's continuing with it. I mean, we hit the 1 month mark after. I don't think I even saw an update at that point. And then we have, the assistant police chief kind of making comments that make it sound like this is a case that he's been working for 3 months already, and they're kicking into a slower gear on it. A lot of cause for concern with this one. Now here we get another, Jackson's husband could not be immediately reached for comment. One thing I do think is worth noting here, and that is sometimes these articles are citing other articles. So I don't know that each of these places is independently reaching out to him. It could be that one place tried to reach out to him, they couldn't get a hold of him, and then all these other articles are kind of repeating that. Nope, we couldn't get a hold of him. No one could get a hold of him. I don't know that there's actual individual contact happening with each of those. Those who interacted with Jackson in the days leading up to her disappearance said she was in a good mood and going about her normal day-to-day business, said her ex-husband, Hans. Ella's intellect is sharp, her compassion is pure, and her charm is captivating, Jason Hans said. Ella has long been one of the few people that I cherish most in this life, and her disappearance is agonizing for those who love her. And it seems like she really had a special relationship with her ex-husband. I saw another video clip where he was basically saying that he feels like he loves her more now than ever, and that he feels like she would probably say the same thing. And admittedly, obviously, they have a son together. It seems like they've kept things in a very good status in terms of their relationship with each other, so they could be parents to the older son. But it does kind of just nag at me a little bit that we don't have the current husband kind of ringing the bells out here, organizing some searches. If I was in his shoes, I'd be doing everything I could. And one of the easiest things you can do is contact these news organizations. They're going to want to hear from you. You're the last person that saw her, supposedly. That quote would go far and wide and raise exposure to this case and get her picture in front of a bunch of people. So why aren't you doing that? Now, admittedly, let's consider the flip side of this. What if you're in a situation like this? You know how these investigations go. They're not going to name you a suspect, but pretty much because of the conditions of her disappearance, you're an instant person of interest. Instant, without doubt. And I know some people don't necessarily want to cooperate with police, regardless of if they're involved in something or not. Just some people believe it's more trouble than it's worth. Words can be twisted up. Things can be thrown around. Some people lawyer up extremely quickly. We don't quite have that going on here. So I really don't know what to think about this case. We have law enforcement saying he's cooperating. But we have her missing, and we have a very weak story that's been put out publicly about the conditions of her disappearance. We've got no real timeline on this day built up. We've got no dialogue or discussion going on about reasons why she might disappear. Is there another man involved? Was she unhappy in her marriage for some reason? Were they talking about separating or something along those lines? Of course, we've got no insight into any of that because the current husband isn't talking. And who knows if the ex-husband would know about that? Who knows if her eldest son would even know about that? The only other very small thing that I could find as I was looking into this case is a record of what looks like a real estate transaction, a piece of land that was sold, I believe, in August, a couple months before this, and looks like it was sold for a pretty good amount of money, a couple $100,000 that it looks like went to the previous owners, which I believe was her current husband, and it looks like a family member of her current husband. Could that be related to this case? I have no idea. It's the only other thing that I could find that basically their names showed up on. And I literally looked through every result in Google that came up. Anything that hit on her name, I was looking at it. But all of a sudden you have a couple $100,000 rolling around. Does that change the dynamic? What if there was trouble in the relationship? Would all of a sudden he be concerned that she's going to take a chunk of that money as she heads out? Possibly there's something to that. I don't know. It's just we don't have enough detail on this case to really dive into those types of theories too hard, but it is worth noting a couple $100,000 looks like it went in their direction just about 2 months before her disappearance. Now, we do have one news article that actually happens outside of that first week window and kind of could lead us to think something else might be going on here. Police search home of missing Richmond woman. This is posted Tuesday, October 29th, 2019. On Tuesday, investigators entered into the missing woman's home on Westwood Drive, where her and her husband live. Search canines could also be seen walking the property. Richmond Assistant Police Chief Rodney Richardson says the search is part of the department's protocol when investigating any missing person. Richardson says the search includes looking for any clues and speaking with neighbors. Our ultimate goal is to find Mrs. Jackson and find her safely. If something happened to her, we want to know what happened to her, said Richardson. Richardson says no substantial evidence was found or can be released. Kind of a strange statement, and I'm wondering if that was just written clunky in the article. So we do have them do one search of the home. Certainly makes sense, especially because you're talking private property, and if someone did hide her on the property, it could be a little sticky in terms of them gaining access to it at a later point. I don't know if there was an actual warrant that was used for this search. I'm really not seeing any detail on that here. Or if he agreed to let the search happen. That would be another very important detail that we're just not getting from the local media on this case. Kind of makes me think that we're dealing with something else in terms of this case, and law enforcement is keeping pretty tight-lipped. That's kind of what I'm feeling about this. The only thing that they've put out that kind of speaks against that is talking about the fact that he's been cooperating with them. But I don't know. What do you think is going on with this case, everyone? Do you think there's something to a situation going on with her current husband? Do you think that this is her leaving of her own accord? I think the possibility that this is a crime of opportunity is kind of out the window. I can't imagine that she would tell her husband, hey, take the 5-year-old, I need some time at home alone. And then someone stumbles upon her at home alone and takes advantage of the situation. I think that one is pretty far-fetched from what we're looking at. But what we're looking at certainly seems to be pointing in two directions. Either she left and someone helped her do that, or something else went on in that home and we just don't have the details about what that is. I want to end this video with another clip.
Nothing makes sense, to be honest. Every scenario we've gone through, there are complications with it. The only one that there isn't a complication with is the worst one.
I'm pretty sure we know what scenario he's talking about, and I sincerely hope that is not the case here. If you are a family member and you have more information that you'd like to put out there publicly, please feel free to contact me at john@lordenarts.com. Before we end today's video, just a quick reminder, no Brainscratch on Friday, but we'll be back with Case Cracked on Monday. And I've got several new patrons to thank, starting with Christy Elliott, Gunhild Lunda Borgen, and Gianna Xiang. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Also, Carly Surgener increased her pledge. Thank you very much, Carly. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do that over at www.lordenarts.com. Take care, everyone. Have a nice, long holiday weekend, and I'll see you back here on Monday with Case Cracked on the Lorden Arts channel.